Donald Trump is panicking that Republican lawmakers are poised to work with Democrats to totally screw Trump regarding the Epstein files. And so Trump is working through Republican Speaker Mike Johnson in a desperate bid to prevent it, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, this is a follow-up to a video we did yesterday. Thomas Massie is a Republican lawmaker from Kentucky who is a particular thorn in Donald Trump's side. Trump has repeatedly publicly blasted him, has threatened to primary him, and apparently is trying to follow through with it. And for his part, Massie seems to be increasingly enjoying getting under Trump's skin and demonstrating that Trump has no power over him. And so regarding the Epstein situation, Thomas Massie put this up on social media. He says, "Our press conference with 10 victims of Epstein sex trafficking is at 10:30 a.m. on September 3rd. I pray Republican Speaker Mike Johnson will listen to the pleas of these victims for justice and quit trying to block a vote on our legislation to release the Epstein files." Okay, this is the press conference in which Thomas Massie and Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna they will have at the on the steps of the Capitol, and this will be incredibly humiliating for Donald Trump and MAGA Republican congresspeople who are trying to give Trump cover to avoid releasing the Epstein files. Now, Massie followed this up with a post on Truth Social Twitter saying, "I'm in D.C. and I will file the discharge petition today, September 2nd, at approximately 2 p.m. when Congress officially returns from the August recess. At that point, we can begin collecting the 218 signatures necessary to force a vote on binding legislation to release the Epstein files." As you may recall, given the gimmicky rules of both the House of Representatives and the Senate, it is very difficult to bypass a legislative leader with respect to a vote. So you take the Senate, for example. It is possible to have overwhelming support for a piece of legislation, but the leader of the Senate, a Democratic leader, Republican leader, can simply bottleneck it, choke it, prevent the vote from even coming to the floor, even if that vote has bipartisan support. In the House, it's a little bit different. You can pass what's called a discharge petition, which allows you to basically sidestep House of Representatives leadership. They can no longer block what you're trying to do as long as you collect 218 signatures. And that would require every Democratic lawmaker, and the odds are that the Democrats have the votes for that, plus six Republican lawmakers as well to team up with the 212 Democrats. That is what Thomas Massie is referring to. And both he and Ro Khanna have said that they have the numbers to do it. Now, in response to this, Thomas Massie follows up with this, and this is where you can tell Donald Trump is panicking, and he's working through Mike Johnson in a desperate bid to prevent that discharge petition from making its way to the floor. He's trying to preempt it so that there won't be a reignition of the Epstein files controversy and pressure for the Epstein files to be released under Trump. So Thomas Massie says Speaker Johnson just scheduled this meaningless vote to provide political cover for those members who don't support our bipartisan legislation to force the release of the Epstein files. And this is from a reporter, a congressional beat reporter, says the House just added a bill to the floor this week that would direct the House Oversight Committee to, quote, continue its ongoing investigation into Epstein. Comes as GOP leaders are trying to stave off a discharge petition forcing the release of all the Epstein files. And it's right there at the very bottom, again, just this piece of saying that the House Oversight Committee, a specific committee in the House of Representatives, will continue to investigate the Epstein files. Well, that's not good enough. That is absolutely not good enough. Let's see what some of the updates are, however, because it doesn't seem to be that this is working. Rules Chair, Republicans won't turn off Massie's discharge effort in committee. House Rules Chair Virginia Fox says Republicans will not seek to turn off Representative Thomas Massie's discharge petition effort in her panel. The North Carolina Republican said no when asked in a brief interview Tuesday if Republicans would try such an effort via the Rules Committee. GOP leaders have been trying to avoid such a move for now. Massie plans to unveil his discharge petition today to force a vote on his bipartisan bill to compel the Justice Department to release its entire Epstein-related file. So it seems that it's making its way through the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee is like, yeah, we're not going to get in the way. That's bad news for Trump, and it's bad news for Johnson. Johnson says, well, this is about the government shutdown. We'll talk about that in a separate video. I want to talk about the Epstein files. This is from a long Politico congressional update. House members ready action on Epstein files. House members are wasting no time laying the groundwork this week for a confrontation with GOP leaders over releasing the Epstein files. Freshly back in Washington from the August recess, Thomas Massie plans to take formal steps at 2 p.m. today to file a discharge petition, the procedural maneuver necessary to bypass leadership and force a vote on his resolution compelling the Justice Department to unseal files related to the late convicted sex offender. Once he does that, Massey said in a social media post, he can begin gathering the necessary 218 signatures required to bring the resolution to the floor. He said in an interview last week he expects to secure that number quickly. Massey has also co-sponsored the measure with Representative Ro Khanna, a Democrat, so a combination of support from virtually all Democrats and at least a handful of Republicans all but guarantees the two lawmakers will meet that threshold. A bipartisan group of House members, including the leadership of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, is set to convene a closed-door meeting with Epstein's victims Tuesday afternoon, according to a person granted anonymity to share the details of a private event. A group of Epstein's victims also plan to hold a rally on Capitol Hill Wednesday morning, separate from a long-scheduled press conference Khanna and Massey will host with victims around the same time, to highlight their discharge petition effort. Despite the GOP's leaders' efforts to quell the Epstein crisis over the recess, Massey said, quote, "This has not gone away like the Speaker had hoped." Speaker Mike Johnson held a call this weekend with Rules Committee Republicans as they worked through how to handle the Epstein uproar, according to two people granted anonymity to discuss the private conversation. Apparently, that effort by Johnson to compel the Rules Committee to intervene has failed, according to Rules Committee Chair Virginia Fox, and it may be because they just don't think the political cover is there to try to sabotage this effort. House GOP leaders on Monday posted a separate resolution directing the House Oversight Committee, again, quote, to continue its ongoing investigation into the possible mismanagement of the federal government's investigation of Jeffrey Epstein for a possible vote this week. And again, we saw what Massey had to say. Rules Republicans are set to meet again Tuesday afternoon, while Democrats on the committee plan to apply new pressure on the Epstein files during the panel's 4 p.m. meeting. They are set to offer their own Epstein-related amendments, according to two other people granted anonymity to describe the private deliberations. And so again, folks, this is huge, all right? And as we speak, I'm going to see if I can refresh the page and see if there's any update from Massey himself on this particular thing. But what we're seeing here is a refutation of the idea that Donald Trump and Mike Johnson could coordinate in such a way as to totally quell and suppress the Epstein scandal. Now, to be clear, it certainly has gone away as a high salience issue compared to where it was, 3 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. But that's because there's been very little by way to report, by way, I suppose, of an update, because it's basically been in limbo. But now that Congress is back in session, there are going to be microphones and cameras in place, and people like Thomas Massey can make all kinds of trouble for Donald Trump and Mike Johnson. As according to Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert are ready to support the discharge petition. Again, that totally undercuts Trump's efforts to quell this because, of course, his name is all over the Epstein files. We know this to be true. We know that he was told this back in May. We know that the FBI was tasked with redacting references to Trump's name from the Epstein files. So there's been a cover-up in effect, and this would blow at least a massive hole in that potential cover-up, or that cover-up potentially crippling it. We'll see. But all this does is just reignite the flames of the most persistent, penetrative controversy that Donald Trump has had in his second term. So he's pissed off about this, and he and Mike Johnson are doing everything in their power to quell it. But it looks like that's not actually going to happen. It looks like Massey and Khanna and the Democrats simply have the means to make this go through no matter what Trump tries to do. But it's very obvious that he's panicking. Mike Johnson is panicking as well, but it seems to be a futile effort. And I'm looking forward to that press conference tomorrow. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.